Now, there are not many beautiful men in the Australian music business, but this one is. Hello to Ross Wilson.
I'm the exception that proves the rule.
Oh, you're magnificent, my friend.
Yeah.
You are. That's a very, very important celebration. I hold in my hand, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, Daddy who? Daddy Cool.
Daddy Cool.
Of course.
Yeah.
40 years? What?
1971 to 2011.
Isn't that... That's quite an achievement.
We've been busy in between.
Yeah, you've had some other projects just quietly. 40 years. Man, 1971 seems like a long, long time ago, but it isn't really, is it?
Well, you can remember what you were doing, don't you?
Yes, I think I was getting my nappies changed.
And listening to Daddy Cool.
Daddy Cool, of course. Well, I grew up in a house where Daddy Cool was sacrosanct.
Really?
Yeah. Simply because all my family were Brighton, Victoria people, and you being.
I was from the neighbourhood.
I know you're from the hood. Absolutely, and from the school that I went to as well. And, so you were like a superstar for everything.
I'd broken out of Bayside.
Yes. And but you were a little bit on the crazy side. Let's face it.
I was crazy for a while.
Yeah.
I'm less crazy now, but I definitely went crazy during the Daddy Cool period.
Yeah. What were some of the experiences that you can actually remember from 1971? Oh, you probably can't remember a lot because it was kind of wild, yeah?
I remember a fair bit because, you see, that's the first time I'd had any really big success. I'd been toiling away in little bands since I was at school. The first band I had, we were all schoolboys, the Pink Finks, but we did actually make the charts. And then I had a band where we started to experiment a bit called The Party Machine. We made one single for EMI and then nothing happened. But I was always working during that time, honing our skills, and my friend Ross Hannaford was with me. And so I went away for about a year and I came back, went off to England for a while, came back after travelling around the world and had a fairly good idea about what I wanted to do. And that turned out to be Daddy Cool. So I had a sort of underground band made of guys from other bands as a side project, and out of that we got 4 members of Daddy Cool, and we started mucking around with old doo-wop music and rhythm and blues because that's what I was interested in at the time. It wasn't because we're going to make a hit band or anything like that. We just wanted to have some fun and explore that music, as so many young musos do, explore the music that I grew up with, and see if I could do it well. And that's what Daddy Cool was all about. And some of the songs that are on the Daddy Who album were songs that were in my, kid record collection, like School Days and things like that.
Was it a really difficult experience back then? Because obviously today it's almost next to impossible to get a band up. Different sort of times, right?
It was different. It was a time when basically anything was possible because there was a vacuum that had been created by changing times. If you remember, there'd been a fight between the major labels and radio. The labels asking for something which they'd still love to get, paid for the records to be played on the radio.
Yes.
And so the radio station said, well, we don't need you. And some indie companies got up and started making new records, and they played those on the radio instead. So eventually the big guys capitulated, and in the meantime, a lot of bands had been put out of work that had been on major labels, and suddenly they weren't playing anymore. So there was a lot of turmoil in the muso scene as well, and that's how I met Gary Young. Had been a pop star with Bobby and Laurie and playing the drums for him, and a few other bands, and suddenly was out of work because the whole scene collapsed. But out of the collapse of the scene came this whole new thing, and we ended up playing in this underground scene called the TF Much Ballroom. Over in Brunswick Street, and it was packed full of hippies and students and what have you. That's where Daddy Cool first performed, and we kind of exploded out of there into the club scene around Melbourne and playing at schools and unis and all the rest of it. So by the time 3 or 4 months had passed, we were pretty big already. It was one of those overnight success things, and in a way we were filling the gap, the need that kids had for something new that they wanted to be interested in, and we're just there's a lot of luck was on our side. Yeah.
But a lot of hard work as well. Now, when did you first get into production? Because that was about that time, wasn't it?
Well, I guess I was intimately concerned with the way the recordings were produced, but I wasn't the actual producer. We had Robbie Porter, who kind of oversaw the whole thing and came up with some pretty good ideas, actually. He was a good musician, so he played piano on a lot of tracks that we didn't have a piano player for. And, but basically the group was road tested and we were still fresh. And we went in the studio and we cut the Daddy Who album in 2.5 days.
Right.
Yeah, because they were the songs we were playing live,
Yeah. And the technology was a bit sort of more simple, I suppose, as well, rather than having 100 tracks.
Yeah, well, it was an 8-track.
Right, 8-track. And that would have been pretty high-tech then.
That was what the standard was. And we recorded it at Armstrong Studio, which was at that time in a single-story terrace on Albert Road, which is now a big skyscraper.
Yeah.
And they'd had that set up. It was like a recording factory. They had everything set up so you could just walk in, plug in, and pretty much get going. And they would get sounds very, very quickly because this was the place where most Melbourne bands recorded their pop songs.
Right.
You know, from Johnny Young to Russell Morris, everybody was there. And I'd been there before recording a few projects over the last few years, and so I was familiar. We were all familiar with the room, so we just walked in and we felt pretty comfortable. Had a good vibe, and it had a Roger Savage as the engineer, who was brilliant, who's now works in doing soundtracks for Hollywood, soundscapes for Hollywood movies. At that time, he was the man who was helped churning out the hits at Armstrong.
Talk to me about your hair back then.
Well, back then it was brown. Now it's grey.
Who did the hairstyle? Was that?
No, I had a really nice little sort of wooden afro comb thing. I'd go. No, I don't comb my hair at all. I just go like that, But it was long. The reason it was long, it
was immense.
Yeah, the reason I had a long hair and a beard was because when I left England after being there for 6 months, and I shaved, got a pretty short haircut, and I didn't have any facial hair at that time, but I thought we're going to travel light, and I'm just going to let it grow, and I'm not going to shave because we can't be bothered because we're on the road, and I don't want any extra expense because I didn't have any money. And so by the time I got back to Australia, I had a fairly healthy beard and a lot of hair, and I thought, I don't mind this.
Well, it's very attractive, and that will come
fit
back
right into the scene. Yeah,
you really would have fitted in incredibly well. Were you really a hippie?
I had hippie leanings. Like I can't really say there were any people that I knew that were really hippies. Yes, there were probably a couple,
right.
But most people were like myself. I'd been to school and I was middle class and I was a bit of a rebel, but down underneath it, I was still a reasonable guy. I got into the hippie kind of things. I started eating a lot of brown rice. That was good.
No,
that's why I was
lentils.
That's why I was so skinny. And I hardly drank it all in those days. Well, it's a different story now.
Well, you came out all right of it, didn't you? I think so. Talk to me about the first Eagle Rock. How did Eagle Rock end up becoming Eagle Drop?
It's one of those life's mysteries. Many people
because there was no pants-off action back in the 70s.
There weren't. No, it was something that evolved, and we're not quite sure where. But University of Queensland claim credit, as do certain rugby teams, as do people in the military.
Right.
Military colleges is a hotbed of eagle dropping, which is
really?
To explain. When Eagle Rock is played in certain circles, the young men in particular automatically undo their belts and drop their strides around their ankles. You keep your undies or your boxers on.
Right.
And you stand there and you do like that. Like whole roomfuls of people.
I've seen it. It's just an incredible sight.
Particularly young people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's their connection with the song.
I'd never
and then at the end of the song, you pull them back up again.
Yeah.
And if you're a particularly liberated young lady, you'll reach in and undo your bra and swing it around your head. As happened, we played a big party in Adelaide recently, and and all the young fellas, it was a multi-generational, so all the young fellas' eyes lit up when we played it, and they were all dressed very well, but the pants came off, and I ended up with a bra sort of slung over my shoulder. It was wonderful.
Yeah, it's one of those great mysteries because I only started
getting
singing
bigger all the time.
A couple of years ago, it started to really just take off.
It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And I must say, this is exactly in keeping with the kind of absurd behaviour that Daddy Cool would like at the time.
Absolutely.
That we encouraged at the time.
It's almost like it, isn't it?
And now that people are doing
the
it.
70s lack of clothing kind of thing.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So 40 years, folks. 40 years. Can you believe that this man looks so good?
Well, can you believe that this album has never been out in its original form on a CD?
That is ridiculous.
With the original art and the fold-out thing in
Plus
the middle.
Plus bonus tracks as well.
The bonus tracks.
What have you got the bonus tracks? What are they?
The tracks are tracks that were recorded after the album that they then, when we got released in the States and around the world, Reprise Records substituted a few tracks with these other newer tracks. Yeah. So if you want, you can program it to international version or domestic.
Clever.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that amazing? After all these years, about time.
It is about time.
Because you are a digital kind of man, aren't you? You're pretty high tech.
Oh yeah, I'll try to keep up.
Yeah. And is there a website that goes with this?
Of course.
Yeah, okay.
daddycool.com.au. Become a friend of Daddy Cool.
And Facebook.
Join the email lists and find out what we're up to today.
And you've got, 3 Facebook accounts now? I can never keep up. Where are you?
I filled a couple, you see.
Oh, yes.
It was Ross Eagle Rock Wilson. That's full.
Okay, so
you can only get on that if someone dies or
no, we don't like that. No,
and then there's Ross Mondo Rock Wilson,
which I've seen you on.
And I must say, there's a difference between the people who go to the Mondo Rock Ross Wilson and the Eagle Rock. The people on the Mondo Rock, Mr. Ross Mondo Rock Wilson, tend to be a bit more kind of thoughtful.
Oh,
I think they're a little deeper.
They're not pants dropping.
They're a little bit more modern too.
Are they? Okay. Yeah. Well, there you are, folks. Go to the real one. For the 40, the
take
40.
Your pants off.
Exactly.
Turn it on.
Let's take our pants off now and play.
I saw Crazy track 1.
Fantastic. This man is an absolute legend. Go and buy this. Buy it. See?
Or download it.
Brilliant. Or download it.
Buy it, download it. Download it, buy
in fact, both.
Yeah.
Buy it and download it.
It's on Sony.
There you go. iTunes, yes.
It should be on iTunes any day now.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, the big launch is tomorrow, folks, and this man is a beautiful... Have I said that? You're a beautiful man.
You keep saying that. I think you've got an agenda.
Ross Wilson!
Thank you.
Daddy who?
Daddy Cool.